Next, let's look at the minimum project or a Hello World project using this new set of frameworks. To start, I'm just going to create a new directory called Hello World, and I'm just going to use a tool called Visual Studio Code just to edit it. You could use any text editor at this point. There isn't something special about this tool. We're just editing text files at this point. So let me create a new file, and I'm just going to call it project.json. This project.json is a JSON formatted file that contains things that the project needs to know about. The frameworks it's going to be using, the dependencies it has, the commands it has, those sorts of things. But for us, we're going to actually just start with an empty project JSON file. That's all that's required for this this minimum sort of project. The other file we're going to create is just a C# file. Then I'm just going to call it program.cs. So this is no different from any other C# file you would create. I'll start with a using of system. I'll create a public class called program. And here I'm just going to create a quick class that's going to handle writing out to the console. So our typical Hello World here is going to be literally a small console app. So having these two files is really the minimum set. We need a project JSON as the start of our project folder, and then we need some sort of code it's going to generate. We don't need to compile this because the C# and VB compilers, as part of the Roslyn platform, are going to compile this as necessary. So let's just open up a command shell at this point. With the command shell opened, we can use a command called dnx, or the .NET executor, to run our project. So we can see dnx and then the name of the directory it's going to look in, which is going to be dot for this directory. And that's going to look for a project JSON that describes the different pieces of the application, the required packages, the frameworks it supports, etc. And then I'm going to give it a command, and by default, run will execute our code as if it were a console app, which in our case it really is. Now, at no point are we specifying all the individual C# classes to compile. Roslyn's going to do that on its own. They're going to go out and look for .vb or .cs files and compile them into an assembly in memory for us to execute. At no point do we have to go through the old cycle before Roslyn that ASP.NET often ran into, where it had to look at the file to be compiled, pull it off of disk, compile it, save that assembly on disk, load that assembly again, and then start working with that code. That long cycle of compilation is shortened by Roslyn by great leaps and bounds. And so us running this is going to include that step of actually compiling the code for us. And so we're now getting Hello World like we might expect. Now, of course, in our example, we're going to be using this framework to build .NET applications, not just console applications. So let's do that next.